Hey folks, this is Kalani. Have you been feeling a bit bored with WoW recently? Like we probably should have had a content update by now to give us a bit more to do and to freshen things up? Well, you aren't the only one and you shouldn't be too surprised. The Shadowlands expansion launched about 3 months ago, and by the looks of things we aren't getting any new content to play around with anytime soon. So what happened here? Shadowlands got off to a great start, but seems to have slowed down considerably since then, so I wanted to compare the current Shadowlands expansion to the previous 2 expansions to see how they line up and to figure out whether Shadowlands is currently behind schedule, and if so, how far behind are we? Let's start by having a chat about when patch 9.1 could actually land in our laps, because unfortunately it doesn't look like it will happen anytime soon. Patch 9.05 is still on the PTR, so until that releases, we can't start testing patch 9.1, and the typical test cycle for a major content patch is quite lengthy. If we look at the past couple of expansions, we can try to find some patterns and extrapolate that data for the Shadowlands expansion and potential patch release cycle. For example, during the Battle for Azeroth expansion, patch 8.1, the first major content patch of that expansion, became available on the public test realms on September 21st, 2018, and was released to live servers on December 11th, 2018, so the entire PTR cycle for 8.1 lasted about 81 days. If we go one expansion before that and look at Legion, patch 7.1 became available on the PTR on September 14th, 2016, and the patch landed on live servers on October 25th, 2016, so that patch was on the PTR for 56 days total. This PTR cycle was significantly faster when compared to 8.1, but while 8.1 included a whole new raid tier for Battle for Azeroth, 7.1's raid was only a 3-boss mini-raid. That might be part of the reason why PTR testing lasted longer, which is important because patch 9.1 will be introducing another 10-boss raid into the Shadowlands expansion, as well as various new additions to expansion systems and a new zone. All of that is going to add to testing time, but either way, now we have a little bit of data to work with to try and narrow down a release date for patch 9.1. Now, the dev team did say that patch 9.1 will be pushed to the public test realm pretty much right after patch 9.05 is released, so that's kind of what we're waiting for at this point. We also know that 9.05 will release sometime in March, and one dev specifically said they're working on getting it out ASAP, but were still unwilling to lock in an actual date. If we play things by their absolute best case scenario right now, and say patch 9.05 can release on the very first Tuesday in March, that would have the patch releasing on March 2nd. That's literally the very next reset. So it's incredibly unlikely, but let's just roll with it. Let's also assume that patch 9.1 would go onto the PTR the same day 9.05 releases. Again, very unlikely, but this would be the fastest timeline that could be achieved. If 9.1 goes onto the PTR in early March and the testing cycle lasts for 80 days, that would put 9.1's release date sometime in late May. If we had a super fast testing period of 60 days, it would mean a release date in early May. In both scenarios, it looks like May is the very earliest we could see patch 9.1 on live servers. That's assuming 9.05 releases practically immediately, which is not likely, and patch 9.1 goes onto the PTR the exact time 9.05 releases, which is also not very likely. The dev team is also still working from home too, and if that has slowed down development whatsoever, we could see a longer PTR cycle than usual, which would lead to an even later release date. Hopefully it wouldn't end up being much later than May, but I could see patch 9.1 releasing in June, or maybe even July. That is a very long time to go without any major additions to the game. So if you've been feeling like you've run out of things to do, or some of the content in Shadowlands is getting a bit stale, I honestly wouldn't be surprised. We are at the point in an expansion's life cycle where the first major patch is being heavily explored on the PTR, at the very least, and we know exactly what we'll be working with in a few weeks' time. But for Shadowlands, we don't even have solid information about a lot of patch 9.1 systems, and it's definitely not only a few weeks away. When compared to the last 2 expansions, it looks like Shadowlands is significantly behind schedule right now. Using a timeline might be the most impactful way of showing you just how far behind we could potentially be, so let's get one of those on screen for you. This timeline covers 220 days total, each notch you see is 10 days, and we're around about day 100 of the Shadowlands expansion. We know patch 905 is slated for March, which would be around about 100 to 130 days after Shadowlands release date, depending on when the patch is ready, of course, and we know that patch 9.1 should go up onto the PTR in the same time frame. If we use the guesstimations for patch 9.1's release date, the very earliest we could see patch 9.1 is around about 160 days after launch, and a more realistic number would be 190 days or even later. The timeline feels a bit empty at this point, don't you think? Well, let's rewind things a little bit and have a look at what our Battle for Azeroth timeline looked like 2 years ago. Just 36 days into the release of BFA, patch 8.1 was already on the PTR. We're off to a rocketing start. At 120 days, patch 8.1 went live. When compared to our current timeline for Shadowlands, that would put the first major content patch about 3 weeks away from where we are. Can you imagine getting patch 9.1 in 3 weeks? That would be amazing. Alas, it was not meant to be. 8.1 included the Battle of Dazar'lor raid, the new Azerite gear vendor, changes and improvements to various systems, new story quests, a new warfront, heritage armor questlines, and the usual class balance changes. At 148 days, patch 8.1.5 hit the public test realms, and then at 211 days, patch 8.1.5 went live. That patch included the smaller Crucible of Storms raid, new allied races, some micro holiday updates, the Brawlers Guild update, various system updates, and the big profession Tools of the Trade update. Those two patches combined give quite a bit more content in the same time frame when compared to Shadowlands. But let's take it one step further and compare these timelines to the Legion expansion. This one is going to be a bit of a flurry. At 15 days after Legion's release date, patch 7.1 was already on the public test realm. At just 56 days after launch, patch 7.1 was pushed to the live servers, less than 2 months after the game launched. That's pretty crazy. This patch included the Karazhan Mega Dungeon, the smaller Trial of Valor raid, more storylines for the Suramar campaign, as well as updates to various systems and class balance changes. At 77 days, patch 7.1.5 went onto the PTR, and it later launched at 133 days. Patch 7.1.5 included the Nighthold raid, the Brawlers Guild update, Mists of Pandaria time walking, various system updates, and class balance changes. It doesn't stop there though. Patch 7.2 went onto the PTR at 142 days and was released at 210 days after the initial launch of the Legion expansion. 7.2 brought us the Broken Shore Zone to explore, a new dungeon, class campaigns that led to class-specific mount rewards, demon assaults in Legion zones, flying for the Legion expansion, as well as various system updates and class balance changes. So, in the same time frame, Legion was already on to patch 7.2, so that's 2 major content patches, a 0.5 patch with a raid, and another 0.5 patch waiting in the wings, ready to be tested on the PTR. Something definitely changed in terms of patch development between all 3 of these expansions, and the current trend seems to be slower development overall. So as you can see, in the time that we could maybe get patch 9.1, in Battle for Azeroth we already had patch 8.1 and patch 8.1.5, and in Legion we had patch 7.1, patch 7.1.5, and patch 7.2. This timeline is also assuming patch 9.1 doesn't see any significant delays, which could definitely happen, so we're looking a little thin so far in terms of content. It is worth mentioning that we will see patch 905, something that neither of the previous 2 expansions had, so there are some updates coming to Shadowlands within this time period. It's just not quite as much content as you would expect from a major patch. Looking at these timelines again, I have no idea what the dev team was doing in Legion, but they were pumping patches out like clockwork. Battle for Azeroth was paced quite a bit slower, and I remember people talking about it being slower back in the day, but it looks like Shadowlands will be even slower still. So if you feel like we should have had some form of update by now, or some new content to sink our teeth into, or even some more information about the next patch coming our way and being able to test it on PTR, it's probably because at this point in time we had all of that in the last 2 World of Warcraft expansions, and more. This may be the first time we've had a relatively large gap in content at the start of an expansion. The long gaps usually happen at the end of an expansion when we're stuck waiting for the next big expansion to finally release. When all is said and done, it's a great thing that Shadowlands has been one of the better launch experiences out of the various World of Warcraft expansions that we've had. I'm not so sure some of the other expansions could hold their own without a content update for so long, and with patch 9.05 improving several systems and offering up new playstyles, and 9.1 working its way through the pipeline, I'm sure the game will be revitalized in a few months' time. Remember that this first major content patch will bring us a new raid, more storylines to work through, more Covenant content, the Maw Zone will be expanded upon with a brand new zone/area to explore, and a new mega dungeon will be thrown into the mix as well. It's not a small patch, that's for sure. Hopefully it ends up being worth the wait. I just hope the wait isn't significantly longer than what we might be expecting. But that's it for this video. What do you think of patch 9.1's potential release date? Do you think we'll see the patch earlier, sometime in May, or do you think it could release later, perhaps in July, or even later than that? How do you feel about the Shadowlands expansion when you see the previous expansion's timelines all compared together? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.